Well, let's focus on our next corporate. We have CenturyPly boards. That's the stock on our radar. It's corrected a little bit of late. The stock is down close to 7% in the last 1 year, though. It's corrected a goodish bit. Mr. Keshav Bhajanka, the executive director of CenturyPly boards, joins us on the show. Hi, Keshav. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. Well, let's talk about demand first up. I'm reading a couple of reports, and they suggest that plywood demand is a little bit softish. Could you tell us whether that's the case? While MDF is reasonably positive, what is the outlook on demand and how has it been in Q4 so far?
Good morning. I think you're right. Overall, the demand in the market, the demand sentiment doesn't seem to be very good. I think there are signs of a slowdown, not just across our sector, but across building materials in general. However, having said that, by virtue of the actions that we have taken on ground, we have still been doing fairly well. So I think as far as CenturyPly is concerned, demand is still okay. We should be doing a growth, and this looks like a good quarter. With regards to MDF, yes, demand is still good. In MDF, there is some pressure from imports, but that is predominantly in southern parts of India. North India being somewhat isolated from the impact of imports has been doing reasonably well, and the demand for MDF remains robust. We have just commissioned our new capacity at the start of this month, and we are gradually ramping up. So I think going forward, MDF should be a good growth driver for us.
Okay, all right. A quick question, follow-up question on pricing. Then I understand in Q4 you have taken a price increase in the plywood segment. Could you quantify that? How much is that? And there are reports that suggest that the unorganized or the unbranded market is coming back. If that is the case, will you have to pull back some of these price increases? So a sense on plywood prices as well as on MDF, because I understand that the export market is down by close to around 4-5%.
So in plywood, by virtue of being the market leader, we do have a certain amount of pricing power in our hands. So we've taken close to a 2% increase. And I don't think, regardless of whether the unorganized sector is bouncing back or not, that we'll have to roll this back. This is primarily due to elevated timber prices, as I had mentioned earlier as well. On the unorganized sector, I don't think that there has been much of a recovery. What we have heard from the market is, firms are still struggling, and that is due to the weak sentiment on the ground. With regards to MDF, we were never exporting because our capacity is predominantly in the north of India at this point in time. So for us, that isn't so much of a challenge. Once our capacity in the south in Andhra Pradesh comes into play, then exports will definitely form a part of our strategy. But I think that is going to be towards the end of this year or the start of next year.
Keshav, hi, good morning. Could you tell us what's the split between plywood and MDF? Because MDF, of course, you've expanded capacity significantly as well. And second, the demand slowdown you spoke about, is that a result of general inflation out there, or are you seeing something more sinister?
Good morning. For us, plywood is still predominantly the largest segment, whereas MDF is going to be the growth driver. As you have pointed out very correctly, we have taken a 60% capacity expansion in MDF as of the previous quarter, and we're looking at 100% further capacity expansion towards the end of next year. So MDF definitely being a smaller part of the business, but definitely has a far higher growth potential going forward due to the fact that we are limited by capacity. And secondly, I think that the major reason for the somewhat tepid demand is that interest rates have gone up. Because interest rates have gone up, the EMIs have actually increased substantially. So discretionary expenditure is being pulled back slightly. You're seeing demand for homes is still quite robust, but I think the decision to furnish or to take up that home project perhaps is getting pushed back slightly. I think this is somewhat temporary, and we're going to see a very good, robust demand outlook in the medium term. Short term, yes, you're right. Due to the interest rates, there's a slight bit of pressure.
Okay. Keshav, just wanted to get back to that point on price hikes, because I think investors want to see if you can start shoring up margins. That's what you had indicated, I think, in earlier conversations. So, can you tell us in both the segments, plywood and MDF, what kind of margins are you looking at Q4 and then getting into the next year? What kind of margin recovery, at what levels will you bring them back?
We normally don't look at margins as quarterly. We look at the long-term margins and we give a guidance based on the same. So for plywood, we have revised our guidance slightly. We have said that we would be looking at 12 to 14% in the medium term. Laminates, MDF, and particle board are largely consistent from 14 to 16% for laminates, 25% for MDF, and 5% for particle board. Having said that, there could be some pressure in the short term, but long term, this margin guidance still holds very well intact.
So that's a slight lowering in the plywood guidance, I would imagine. You said 12 to 13%, right? Where does that
14.
leave? 12 to 14%. And where does that leave your outlook on blended margins at an overall company level?
I think our blended margins will be to the tune of 16, 17% plus. Of course, the objective will be to push them further higher. But I think 17% is a safe assumption on the blended margin, considering the increase in the MDF capacity going forward.
Okay, all right. What about your market share? You're indicating that maybe the industry is going through a little bit of a lull, but y'all are doing fairly okay. So if you could give us, what's your sense in terms of market share? I think in the plywood segment, your market share is around 6%, which has improved by around 100 basis points. So where is that headed? And we have your blended margins at around mid-teens. What about top line growth for the company on the whole for FY24?
So the objective for growth is always 20% plus, and I think we are very well in line for 20% plus top line growth in FY24. As far as market share is concerned, the unorganized data isn't authenticated. It could be any figure because it's very difficult to get a sense of what the unorganized play is. Having said that, in the organized sector, I think we have pushed up from 25% of the organized space to 30% of the organized market. So that's close to a 5% market share in the organized space. Slowly, as the unorganized moves towards the organized, this is going to lead to an even bigger overall increase because the size of the organized pie is increasing.
All right. Thanks very much. Good speaking with you, Keshav, and good luck. Let's hope we are at the higher end of the interest rate curve and there's not very much more to go. But overall, you're still sounding pretty confident with the growth prospects, even though there is a bit of a slowdown, which we are seeing in the plywood segment, furnishings, etc., being postponed, as you said. I mean, the market is doing quite okay, a third of a percent higher, which means we've got about 55 points